Today I am starting a new project with the working name IOU. So it's a project that deals with money and with debt, with personal debt. And the idea is to create a mobile application that can be used to share uh, money, share debt between friends, and then through networks of friends, of people, these personal debts can actually be expanded and broadened globally to a whole monetary system of its own. So, firstly, let's talk a little bit about money. What is money? We're quite used to money through the concept of coins and notes, where there is a certain amount of money circulating in the economy, and then each person or corporation or whatever entity in the system can holds a specific amount of that money. Now, of course, these days money has become really complex with the whole banking system and money being created from debt, as is the idea in this system. But the simple way of thinking it, and probably the mental model that most of us have, is more akin to, say, gold coins or silver coins, where there is a limited amount of that, and there's kind of a specific amount of money that is circulating, and then just we are using it as a means of exchange. And in this system, there is these gold coins and these silver coins. They are like a symbol of the value, a symbol of what is it that the whole economy can produce. So let's say if we have 1 million gold coins, then one gold coin represents 1 millionth of the whole value in the economical system of all the things that can be bought with that, with those gold coins. Whereas if you have money that is based on debt, is more like a note keeping system. So the amount of money, the amount of debt can either increase or decrease. Whenever someone takes a new debt, there's more money in the system. When someone repays the debt, the money gets extinguished. So the amount of money becomes smaller, and in a sense, that all it is a note keeping system. So there's a huge table of who owes what to whom. And historically, there actually has been times where the debt-based money is more popular, whereas on other times the coin-based money is more popular. And one good resource for this is late David Graeber's Money, the First 5,000 Years. This is a kind of more entertaining short summary, 1 hour summary of this book, which is about 500 pages. So if you don't have the time or resources to read the book, you can maybe browse through it with this video, or if you have the interest in it. But the basic point that I want to give as a context to this application is that actually, based on David Graeber's, there is more longer periods of history where we have used debt as money instead of coins and these notes that are circulating these days. Now we're kind of in also in a new phase of history, since we broke up from the gold-backed currencies that used to exist 50, 100 years ago. And for the last 50 years about, we've been like in this transition moment of going to a more debt-based monetary system again. Even though it's like it's a complex question that what it actually is, what is like keeping the current system alive, or how long can it actually survive, as we can maybe a lot of us can sense that there is a lot of turmoil in the monetary system at the moment. as a side note, if we think about something like Bitcoin, it actually is it works more like a cold coin, so it's often being called digital cold gold, because there's a limited amount of bitcoins, and then in the same way that there's limited amount of gold in the whole world, and it can, yeah, it's not made from debt. So what are some of the differences between this kind of debt-based money and this coins-based money? So one thing is here that the debt is always personal, in the sense that there's somebody who is in debt to someone. So there is a personal relationship between the debtor and the debtee. I'm sorry, my English is not that perfect always, so maybe I might slaughter some of these words, concepts. Hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to say. Whereas the coins are anonymous. So if you have a gold coin, I don't know the history. If I receive a gold coin, I don't know, you know, what it has been used on previously, where is it coming from. It's just a coin, and assuming, you know, it's valid gold coin is just the same as any other gold coin. So it's anonymous, which is a good, you know, what if you are afraid of you know, some living in a dystopian or dictator under a dictatorship, where you kind of don't wanna, you don't want the masters to know what you're spending your money on, so then you want anonymous money. But on the other hand, it can also be used for, more easily be used for, you know, purposes that you wouldn't want money to be used on, like say waging wars or paying someone to murder someone, or like things like this. So there are like good and bad things for anonymity. And when you have this kind of personal debt-based money, there's always somebody who is giving the debt. There's someone who is condoning the usage of the money for whatever you're using it for, because you have to, it's based on like personal relationships, it's based on trust. So how did I got interested in all of this kind of a long history personally for me? As I used to write a blog back in the early 2000, and then in 2009 I wrote about social money, which is where I basically laid out the same concept as I'm trying to give to you now in a maybe shorter form in this video. If you're interested, I have this blog currently like backed up in this address here. Maybe I'll put it in the notes in the YouTube video. But there's an interesting reason, or like how I got convinced that this is a good idea, because there used to be this project called Ripple. And if you're into cryptocurrencies, maybe you've heard of this Ripple thing. But back in the day, in the year 2009, which also happens to be the same year that Bitcoin got launched, back then also Ripple already existed, but it was quite a different concept. So back then Ripple, we can go here, like this is the same link that I had in the blog. This is the explanation of Ripple from Peer-to-Peer Foundation wiki, and they kind of going over the description and the status of the Ripple, and you can see here years like 2013 it became fully open source, but then update Ripple has been taken over by a private company and it's no longer open source. And then there's the explanation of what happened. And in the beginning, Ripple used to be exactly this concept that I'm trying to lay out, which was personal IOUs. But then they changed it with the popularity of Bitcoin, and they introduced, here it says RPX, but it became XRP, which is kind of a similar kind of concept as in Bitcoin, where you have, you know, XRP amount of XRPs that are circulating in a similar fashion as a traditional money, where it's, you know, in a sense anonymous. Every XRP is exchangeable to another XRP without having any difference or, you know, relationship between any two persons or entities. But anyway, I don't know if I can get a good quote from here. In the beginning, Ripple was a clean transfer utility using trusted relationship between friends to find a path for payments. Any currency can be used with it. So this is basically the concept that I want to revive, where XRP later changed into something quite different, but still XRP, as it is used between banks or corporations, they do use this trusted relationship between each other to exchange value. So there's this kind of weird mixture of these old concepts with the new XRP added in the between, and somewhere here they had explanation that they added the XRP to, yeah, you need to stash. It is used to guard against malicious attacks like loop transfers or clocked networks, as each transfer also costs some XRP. Yeah, I don't know. maybe that's one usage for it, but there are other ways to like protect the network for sure, instead of adding this another layer to it. Yeah, anyway, this is kind of just to give you some background of where I'm coming from, and how for 15 years I've been kind of wondering, where did this idea disappear. It used to be the idea of having personal peer-to-peer transfers between people, and yeah, nobody really built a system like this to be built between trusted friends. So yeah, let's go a bit forward. So maybe, I don't know, maybe at this point I could like try to explain a little bit more, like what is this application, what can you do with it, and then we go to something about the possible problems or caveats with the debt based monetary systems, like what is good and bad about debt, and how to avoid doing the bad kind of debts. So the idea here is to have a mobile application where you can define a group of friends that you trust, that you trust to give a loan to. So I don't if you have heard of applications like Settle Up or Splitwise. These are like a first step into this direction. So there are applications that you can use if you say go for a road trip with your friends, and then you have a lot of expenses, and you don't like, you need to keep track of who paid what, so that in the end everyone has paid everything. Everyone has been like paid their fair share of all the expenses of the road trip. And then just you can, every time, you know, let's say you buy some food or you pay for the gas, anyone can do the payment, and then in the Settle Up you will say that Alice paid, you know, 100 euros, and then it will be equally split between all the people on the road trip. So it's like IOUs between friends, but then there's a second there's only one step basically that we need to make this into a global system, in the global possibly monetary system. So if we build up on trust relationship, so let's look at this image, we can actually create these personal IOUs into a global IOU. So if I give let's say my friend gives me I don't know, shoes or something, but they are like valuable shoes, so it's not a gift. He would like to get something in exchange, so I can give you IOUs of one, you know, good pair of shoes, or maybe we say that they cost 50 euros, that I give him IOUs worth of 50 euros. And that works because he's my friend, and I am his. More importantly, I am his friend, and he trusts that if I give him 50 euros of IOUs, I will repay them back later at some point in time. Or, if something really bad happens, say I die and I'm never able to pay them back, it's 50 euros, when you compare 50 euros to losing your friend, you don't really care about the 50 euros. So the idea is that there's some exchange of money, some loan being made between friends, but these loans are so small that they are not really endangering the friendship if the loan goes bad for one reason or another. But this works between friends who trust each other. But let's say if you want to go to some shop or travel abroad, you don't know anyone there, you can't, like, even if you give your IOUs to a store, even you're probably in your local store, it might be difficult to give an IOU. Maybe in a bar there still exist these systems where the bartender knows all the customers, and he or she may trust that the customer will pay back later, but it's not that common these days anymore. Anyway, so if there isn't this trust between the people doing the exchange, then how is it possible? So all we need is some chain of trust. So let's say in this example that Alice wants to buy something from Diane, but Diane doesn't know Alice, so Diane doesn't accept the IOUs of Alice. But luckily Diane knows Charles, knows and trusts Charles, who knows and trusts Bob, who knows and trusts Alice. So how Alice can give IOUs to Diana that are valid, that she is willing to receive, can be done through this network. So Alice gives her IOUs to Bob, who gives his IOUs to Charles, who gives his IOUs to Diana, and then as a result Diana receives IOUs of Charles, and she trusts Charles, so that's good. And why would like Bob and Charles be participating in this? How does it look from their point of view? So let's say Bob receives IOUs from Alice and gives his IOUs to Charles. So the balance of his IOUs stays the same. He doesn't give more or get less. He like receives promissory notes from Alice and he gives his promissory notes to Charles. So from his perspective, nothing really changes. So instead of like he simply is switching one IOUs from one friend to another, and since he trusts Charles and Alice the same, it doesn't really matter to him who owes to whom he owes, because they, from his point of view, they are valued the same. And like this, by creating this kind of trust networks, if you heard the concept of 6 degrees of separation, where actually each one of us is quite close to each, like everyone else in this planet, since on average there's only 6 degrees of separation, something like that, from one person to another. So as long as there are these connections of trust that can be made between people, then anyone can trade with anyone, and all they need to do is promise to pay back. And so how would this work in practice, or a little bit more specifically, is that each one would define his or her friends and the amount of money. This is like how it works is you can use, basically you still need something to calculate the value of the debt. So you can use like euros or dollars or gold or grains or whatever. It can, like, the concept of amount of debt can be whatever. It can be anything, but probably in the first step it would be your local currency. So say I am in Europe, so I would use euros. So I would define my how many euros, up to how many euros do I trust my friends. And maybe this is not to be taken too literally to mean that I value our friendship at this amount, because in the end you don't want to really set up the limit of trust too high. It's better to have a lot of friends with little lower amounts of trust, and that kind of makes the network more stronger. Even if somebody is not able to pay their loans, it doesn't like hurt anyone else that much, because it's only like a small portion of all the trust built up in the network. So let's say I have a maybe I only have 5 friends, and for each of them I trust up to 50 euros. That would give me a credit limit of 200. 5 times 50 is 250 euros. So this system would allow me to buy something worth up to 250 euros. But then that would be the limit, because I don't have enough trust in the network from my friends to use in the network. And also, of course, these chains need to be able to be built, so you don't necessarily always get to use all of your trust. It depends on the topography of the network and how it goes. So yeah, in like a normal system, let's say if we're thinking about euros or bitcoins, everyone kind of you in a sense, you need to receive them first before you can use them. You need to receive euros before you can spend euros. You need to receive bitcoins before you can spend bitcoins. And here, in a sense, when you are on a zero balance, it means that nobody's in debt to you, and you're not indebted to anyone, or at least those debts cancel out each other, so the whole balance is zero. So in a sense, that's a good place to be. That's like a neutral ground. Then if you give more and you receive IOUs from other people, then your balance goes to positive. Then like you have more, you can spend more. Whereas if you receive more and use your own IOUs to receive stuff, then your balance goes to negative. And in this example, like this 250 would be the maximum negative that the balance can go to. So it's in a sense, it's there are some upsides to it. So let's say if we think about Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, there's always the advantage of the people who go there first. So the value of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies tend to increase. So the earlier you get in, the more you can like get free money in a sense, because you can buy it cheaply, and then the value appreciates, and then you can use that those currencies to get more than you paid for when you got in. But in this system, there isn't really this kind of there's no possibility of trading. There's no possibility of going there before others, because you start at zero, and since you also aim to be at zero, that's the balanced position. You can't really, there's nothing to increase in value. There's nothing to manipulate higher or lower. It's just a personal debt that you promise to pay back. And now, of course, whatever you denote that debt in, if you denote it in euros, you need to trust that the value of euros stays stable. There's also, of course, this denotion of the debt that affects it later on, but there isn't in the same way. The value doesn't go up or down based on the interest in the whole system. Even if this will become a global monetary system, it doesn't matter. Like whenever you get in it, you don't like receive, or you don't need to buy it to yourself if you're coming late into the system. Right. So let's talk a little bit about debt, because of course debt doesn't have such a good feeling to it in a sense, and the concept and idea of having debt to your friends, it's not really like yay, let's all be indebted to each other in money, like what could go wrong kind of intuition that we have. And that's it's a good intuition to have. But there are different kind of debts. It's good to think like dig a little bit deeper in here, and as it is being laid out in the David Graeber's book, this is kind of how this is kind of the first monetary system that we have had in the ancients. It's actually been, we usually, the normal concept is that we have barter, and then from barter we got like coinage, we got like coined money, and from there we got the debt based money that we have these days. But actually it's been kind of the other way around, where the debt based money has been before coinage. It has in a sense been the first type of money that there has been, and it's just been a much more personal kind of debt. It's always been this person to person debt. So let's say you live in a little community, and you, maybe it's more like a gift type of system in the beginning, but then when the community expands, or you maybe deal with other neighbor communities, then it's more like a bookkeeping record of who has given whom what. So if there is more trading happening, and it's not solely based on a personal relationship, such that, you know, you gave me a gift and I, you know, will think of good of you because of that, and maybe I give you back sometime. It's just a bookkeeping record of who has given whom what, and then these book records can be cancelled on later on if the balance of exchange changes the other way. So some of the properties of like good versus bad debt, as I have laid out in here, is that is the concept of interest. So if we have interest in the involved with the debt, then there's the danger of the debt overgrowing and growing and growing, so that it's never been able to be paid back, and then this can be lead to kind of usury, I think is the English word, maybe like you just give some loans to person, and in the end the interest will be so high that you can just live off the interest, you know, collecting the interest on your debt. And you actually, like the banks these days, they don't actually want you to pay back the loan, they just want you to pay the interest, so they can endlessly be receiving money from you in the form of interest payments. They don't, you know, as long as they know that you're able to pay the interest, and, you know, theoretically you would have the possibility to pay back the collateral, or the what is the actual debt itself, you know, they're happy, they're getting constant payments, and that's what they want. If you pay back the whole loan, then, you know, the relationship ends and you're not paying them back anything anymore. So that's what they live on. They live on the interest. But in here there's no need for interest. Like, it's your friend, you know, you wanna just be, you wanna have a relationship with that friend. You don't wanna be receiving constantly money from them. You wanna be as a reciprocal relationship, like a mutual friendship relationship. It's not a relationship of of commerce, of like this, just getting money out of them. And another important concept is the concept of defaulting on loans. So, you know, even if there isn't any interest, then sometimes it happens that you end up in a situation, you know, where you have so much debt that you will never be able to pay it back. And then, you know, you can get into this mentality of being a debt slave, where you have to work all day and night just to pay back the debts from the past. So, you know, if this happens, the idea in the system is that you can, whenever, you can just default on all the debts that you have. And it's not like a concept that doesn't have any consequences. Like, your friends probably will not be very happy if you default on your debt. If you say that I will never be able to pay it back, sorry, I will not pay it back. But it also like keeps the system honest in a weird sense. It keeps it like it keeps it like sensible, because if you trust that you can always get your debt back, then you can just like loan whatever amounts, just like give huge amounts of loans, because you know that, you know, this debt is eternal, they have to pay it back one way or another. And then there's no consequences of giving too much debt to someone. And then this can also lead to big differences in the status. Like there are some people who have loads and loads of debt, and then there are some people who basically have like a lot of IOUs of other people, so they are like plus 1 million, whereas the other ones are like minus 1 million euros, whatever. Like just these imbalances can occur when there's too much debt, and when the debt is considered to be eternal, it is considered to be something that has to be paid back at one time or another. So the whole system is to facilitate trade. It's like a temporary system when there's imbalance between what you have. Like it's not to like grow your like in the if you have euros bank account, you can get into this mentality of, oh, I want more and more and more, and if I have 1 million, I want 2 million, if I have 3 million, I want 10 million, if I have 10 million, I want 100 million. So there's no like there's never this point of being satisfied of having enough. Whereas here, being in zero actually is a good position. Like you are neutral. You don't, if you go too much in a positive, like there are so many people that are indebted to you, maybe they are too indebted. Maybe they are not happy anymore because their life goes on, repaying the loans from the past, and maybe they're just not able to pay it back anymore. So it's always good to keep the system such that there isn't too much debt in it. There's like enough to facilitate trade, or maybe it's not the debt that facilitates trade, it's the trust that facilitates the ability of taking debt. It's the trust that is the important part in here, not the amount of debt. So actually what you want is a lot of trust and little debt. So yeah, so being able to default it keeps the system sane. It doesn't, like, people can't go into this debt slavery, and it also keeps it honest by not building up too much debt in the system. And then the third concept with the danger of debts is the ability to kind of sell your debt. So maybe you're familiar with this. You need to pay a bill, and for one reason or another you haven't paid it, and the debtor who would want you to pay the bill sells that debt to some loan agency, and now you're getting a much bigger bill. You're getting the bill that you had before, plus the agency's compensation for this. And if you still don't pay, they will take it to the courts and to the legal system, and maybe you'll end up in jail. So there's like by moving the ownership of the loan to someone else that can enforce that loan ultimately with violence, there's the system becomes much more sinister, much less humane. You took a debt from your friend, but you end up being in jail because that debt is being owned by some loan shark or some entity that has the force to come and collect that debt from you. So yeah, in this system, debts will always be bound to that person. If you give an IOU to your friend, then only your friend can use that IOU. So we can programmatically like always sign these debts to be owned by some specific entity and not to be moved around willy-nilly. Okay, I'm just going around back and forth through this system. Maybe I will like edit this to take the best bits from here, but this would be my first introduction to this system of IOU based money. And so far I've coded very little, and hopefully this will start up some conversation. If you feel like it, please comment it below here. I could even start up some group chat somewhere if there's enough interest in this. And yeah, let's see in the next video, hopefully soon. Let's see how well this project gets started. Bye bye.